Mr. David Gerstel. How are you?
I'm good this morning, Don. And you?
I'm excellent. I'm actually really excited.
Okay.
I have an Amazon bestseller, multi bestseller, and a real construction guy on the line.
Okay.
That's who we want to talk to here. That's who my audience wants to hear from.
Okay. Well, I'm
Yeah.
happy to talk to him. I wish
Oh,
I could
thank
see
you.
them and interact with them, but that's not possible. We'll do the
This
best we can.
that's great. Given this, people can watch us on YouTube. They can listen to the audio.
Yeah. And they get a
Uh,
hold of me and straighten me out if they want to.
yeah, that's right. They're going to be editing this for reality. See if what you talk about is real.
Yeah. Yeah.
Can you actually, David, can you tell us who you are and how you come to be speaking to this worldwide group of forward-looking construction professionals?
Okay. Let me try and be concise. I don't think my autobiography is all that valuable to them. Um, I'm a builder. I finished up college, didn't want to go on with into graduate school or the standard professions that my family tended to practice. Wanted to learn to work with my hands
Mm.
and got real lucky and ran into a couple of brilliant, crazy, but brilliant carpenters who kind of took me under their wing and said, "This is the trade for you, Dave." So I became a carpenter, a
Mm.
pretty good carpenter. Worked strictly as a carpenter for the first 6 years of my career, and then was pushed really by a big recession into getting my license as a general contractor and realized this is for me. I
Mm.
like the independence I have now. I sort of crave freedom. So being a builder turned out to be a very good path for me. That event took place that turn into being an independent builder took place a long time ago. I mean, we're going on half a century. I've been doing this a long time.
I was saying
I
that our
also have
gray
to
hair gives us street cred,
what's
David.
that?
Our
Yeah,
gray
yeah,
hair gives us
yeah,
street cred.
yeah. And I'm 75, but I've been kind of blessed with my health, and I can pretty much go full steam ahead without any aches or pains. Still, I'm very pleased about that. But
Yeah.
I also love to write. I've always loved to write. My dream when I started out was to lead a very free life and do physical work and write books, and that's pretty much what I have done. Um, I guess I'm on this podcast and other podcasts not because of my carpentry, but because of my books.
Right.
I eventually, long story short, ended up writing a book called Running a Successful Construction Company.
Mm.
It was published by Taunton Press, and that put me on the map. That was a blessing for me. That book has had several 100,000 readers. It's one of 7 books I've written. Uh, I'm writing one now. I'll
Oh,
briefly
a fresh one.
called Building Freedom. And the subtitle is A Construction Pro's Path to Financial Independence and Beyond. And maybe we'll talk about that some other day.
Oh, I'd love to. Let's have you back on when that book is ready to be rolled out.
Okay, well,
Yeah,
if I'm good enough today, maybe I'll be lucky to have you do that.
that's right. I should hold back a little bit. Let's see how you do first.
Yeah, you got to test me out. I think the book we're going to pay attention to today, or the book about the subject we're going to pay attention to today, is this big old thing.
This one here, I've got it here too. Nail your numbers.
Okay.
Yeah.
Which is about bidding and estimating. The subtitle is A Path to Skilled Construction Estimating and Bidding. The title is Nail Your Numbers. And I wrote it because, first of all, I needed something to write about, but also because I'd come to realize that more needed to be said and taught about bidding and estimating than I was able to do with my Running a Successful Construction Company book, where I really only have a chapter on that subject. I also realized there really wasn't anything on the market that taught guys how to bid and estimate. There are books on estimating, which are basically cost tables, or
like
checklists,
specialty,
but don't really describe the process. And in particular, they don't pay any attention to bidding. They pay attention to estimating. We'll talk more about that distinction in a few minutes, I hope.
Yeah.
So I decided to write this book, and lo and behold, it turned into an instant Amazon bestseller over its first months, and occasionally is, from time to time, it still is. It's gotten a response. It's a bit of a bear of a book, I have to tell your listeners. I mean, I was a little shocked when I first saw it.
It's big, David, but you could pick through it and go to the sections you need, and it's very nicely laid out. I like that you've got examples in there and little anecdotes. The bottom feeder anecdote is the one in this chapter that I was mentioning to you earlier. I think those are really powerful.
Lots of stories and hopefully some good jokes. So,
very similar to my show. I've got, I start with a joke at the beginning of the podcast. Those are pre-recorded, of course. And then at the end of the show, for instance, after your interview, we have Story Time with Dom, which is a segment where I tell stories from the field. I take out all the confidential information, of course, but the very same thing. I find people really react to hearing the real stories. So I'm glad you did that in your book.
Stories teach. Yep.
Yeah.
So, okay. So here I am, 50 years into my career, a blessed guy. I still love to build. I still love to write. I really haven't had to work for financial reasons since I was in my mid 30s. Construction was very good to me. I live frugally. So I don't need a lot of money, but we happen to have a hell of a lot of money, and I like that. And it's because of construction and because of the way I learned to do it. And the way I learned to do it is the way I teach. And it's not the only way to do it, but it's, I think, a way which works for a fair number of guys. And that's why I'm here today, I suppose.
I think, on that, I'm going to make an assumption. I'm going to ask you if I've got it right, but you seem to take yourself seriously. What I mean is you value your time. And especially when I looked at the estimating chapter, I didn't get the sense that you would get a phone call from somebody and you would just run it immediately over to their property to bid on their job. You take your time and you want to make sure it's the right person, the right kind of work for what you're set up to do. Am I on the right path there?
A key observation. I mean, frugality is very, very powerful. And frugality with time is equally as important or more important than frugality with material resources, and we don't get that much time in a lifetime. So let's use it with reverence,
right?
Care.
Yeah, with respect.
Yeah, I think you're really getting to the whole subject of bidding here. I mean, let me make the distinction. And frequently, when I'm talking to builders, they'll use bidding and estimating as if that was one hyphenated word, and bidding and estimating was one process. In other words, they get the phone call, they're off to see the client. Bidding and estimating, to my way of thinking, are very separate kinds of processes. In fact, I think of the overall process as bidding, then estimating, then bidding. Estimating is a kind of a grinded out management process. You crunch your numbers, you aim to get them right. It's a whole subject in and of itself. Bidding is an executive process. It's a leadership process. Every time you decide to bid a job, to go after it,
right,
you are making an executive decision. Even if your company is you and your dog, I mean, you're deciding where you're going to be spending your time for the next few days, weeks, months.
Yep.
You are deciding what direction to take your company in. You're deciding what kinds of people you're going to be associated with for whatever length of time that job is going to take, and what your relationship with them might mean for you and them in the future. These are important decisions, and they need to be made carefully, and they need to be made in a systematic way, I think, as well as in an informed, experience-based, intuitive way, which takes us to the subject of the lead sheet, which you mentioned before we were on air here, right, which I guess we'll get to.
Yeah, well, now, you know what? Now is a great time to get to that. One of the things I encourage people to do is to take the emotion out of the bidding or estimating process. And I'm hyphenating it on purpose. I'm eager to hear more of your teachings on that. But I ask people to have what I call a bid yes, no checklist. And all that means is, as I start so many things, I tell people, go get a cup of coffee, leave your office, go sit with a piece of paper, and figure out how you're going to score any estimate, any request for work that comes in. Do I know the person? Is it the right neighborhood? Is it the right kind of job? However you decide to score it, but come up with what you call, I think, a lead evaluation sheet. I call a bid yes, no checklist, and remove the emotion. Just look at logic.
Let me tell a little story, since you said you like stories.
I love stories.
I love stories that illustrates that telling point, that key point. I got a call once from a representative of the owner of what was then the largest technology company in the world, and still is one of the largest.
Yeah, given where you live, I can only guess.
Actually, you probably wouldn't be able to guess, but
Oh, okay.
But I mean, there are not that many guys to choose from, so you might be able to guess. But I should probably preserve his anonymity.
That's okay. Yeah.
The representative, his representative, was calling me because he wanted me to take on the extensive renovation of this guy's house/palace. In particular, he wanted me to remodel the kitchen and build an outdoor kitchen. That in and of itself was, in today's dollars, was probably several $1 million worth of work. The renovations and the rest of the house, some other millions of dollars. I don't really know because I didn't get far enough of the job to learn entirely learn the scope of work. And of course, my instant reaction was intensely emotional. Wow, me?
Yeah.
I'm interested. I mean, I had this feeling of, this was quite a long time ago. I mean, before I was as confident about where I am in life as I am now. I thought that's a step up into a stratosphere that I've never even seen before. What does this mean for the future? It's very exciting. But I did know enough then, even though I was a little naive still, to know, whoa, slow down, get that cup of coffee, think this over. And after I did, I realized it was in no way a job for me. Now, I didn't have a formal lead evaluation sheet like I have now, like the one I'm looking at here in my book. But I had one sort of built in my head, and I realized a few things. A, the job is too far away. We won't be able to use our usual team of utterly trusted trade partners. My crew might be willing to go do it. I would have asked them before I took on such a job. I always asked my crew, look, we've got this job opportunity. Are you guys interested in it? They always said yes, but I thought it was an important gesture of respect to ask them before I took the job on. They might have been willing to take it on because they like big, challenging jobs, but it was too far away. On top of that, I wasn't really going to meet the owner. I was not going to meet this guy that I was relying on to pay me for our work. I had no idea what kind of person he was. I knew he was probably pretty ruthless to have built a company of the size that he built, and that such people have sometimes a tendency to rip off their contractors and say to them things like, as one client said to a friend of mine, "You don't like what I'm telling you, Mike? Have your attorneys call mine, and then meanwhile lose the number." Boom. Yeah. So I knew that was a possibility.
Yeah, guys like that have their own legal department.
Check this guy out.
Yeah.
That's an important part of evaluating a job for a bid. You want to get to a sense of who the client is and where they're at, what kind of person you're going to be bringing into your life if you decide to bid their project. Also, personally, I'm offended by gluttonous lifestyles. I don't want to participate in helping people build them, and I didn't want to build this guy's palace for him.
It didn't sit right with you, Phil, like in your own value judgment.
Philosophically, ethically, practically, financially, logistically, or strategically. I said, the representative, I'm honored that you called me, but it's not a job for us.
Yeah. It's so interesting. And I'm glad you shared that, because we are our values. And if I give up on my values, if I work with a client I don't like, every time that hammer comes down, I don't like the guy. I don't like the job. I'm actually not going to do my best work. It doesn't matter if I'm swapping out his appliances. I'm not going to do my best work if I don't like the client. That's how I look at it. So it's interesting that you say the same thing.
I had a rule of thumb to sometimes take on really difficult clients. They were challenging to me, and I felt I grew by trying to cultivate the patience and the wherewithal to handle them. And I had a few very difficult clients. But I also realized that it may have been unfair to my crew, at least in one case, because they're the people who actually had to put up with this asshole day by day. It didn't compromise their work. The project was such an exciting craft challenge that they loved doing it. And fortunately, the work was actually a few hundred feet from where this guy was usually located.
Okay.
So they'd hear him screaming at people all day long, and it offended them. Yeah. He didn't scream at them. He made a slight gesture in that direction one day, and we had let us say, a brief discussion and put an end to it. But, yeah, you don't want to bring people into your life which are going to make a year or a week or a month or kind of miserable, intense. You don't want to do that to your people.
Yeah.
Your crew, your trade partners.
A couple of great lessons in what you've already shared is that this job was outside of your zone, outside of where you could reasonably service. And that costs money. That's a profit leak. David's having.
Pardon me.
Coughing.
We got a lot of pollen down here.
Yeah, and the sun is right in your eyes. When I get sun in my eyes, I'm guaranteed to sneeze within the first couple of minutes.
Oh, it's the sun in my eyes? I should lower my blinds a little bit. It's pretty bright out there. So
those are good observations. And I hope people are taking the message away, because I had a phone call just the other day with a gentleman who's got a renovations company.
Yeah.
And he was struggling with what we call qualifying his prospects. So you get a phone call, he needs the work. And he's like, this lady just wants a number. She just wants a number before she'll even talk to me. And it's funny because that's the story you've got in the bottom feeder subsection of your estimating chapter. And I was laughing to myself. I mean, it's a serious situation, but I was laughing when I was reviewing it for today's interview. It's like, that's the same situation. And you guys are on opposite coasts. You're on the West Coast. He's way on the East Coast.
Yeah. It's, there are times when you have to expand your parameters of what you're willing to accept. You're just starting out. You may need to take almost every job that comes your way. You're building a base of clientele. Hopefully you don't end up with a bad apple. Sometimes work is just so scant, so scarce, that likewise you have to take on difficult people. In fact, the two really difficult people I took on both came to us during a period where builders were failing all around town, and they had huge jobs for us. So we took them and we dealt with them. But if we hadn't taken them, I would have had a hard time keeping my crew employed. As it was, they provided us with a year and a half of work, each of them, on the big projects. So I think, let me hold up this. Is this going to work, Don, if I hold up the lead evaluation sheet?
Absolutely. Yeah. People that are looking at it online, they'll see that. Yeah.
I mean,
it's a nice grid layout
to construct this, but basically down the first column, you've got the considerations. And then the way I do it, I just use a yes and a no. I use a minus, an okay, and a plus column in the middle. And then I have a little area for comments. With that sheet, by now it's almost automatic. I probably wouldn't need to, I probably wouldn't need to refer to it anymore. It's in my head, but I think it's worth actually creating a form, not starting with a raw sheet of paper every time, but creating a form that covers everything that you think you want to cover in your initial contact with the client when you're making that decision whether or not to bid. I'll mention a few of the things that I think are critical to take a look at. Has that client had prior building experience? With whom? And why are they not calling that person back and calling you instead? Project description and size, of course. Budget, big item. How's it being funded? Dropping down a bit. What kind of bid processes are they interested in? I have done almost no competitive bidding. I threw that overboard when I was a pretty young builder. I said, what I'm providing here in the way of estimating is a valuable product for the owner, and I'm going to get paid for doing this work. So you want to know, is your client open to paying you for pre-construction work, or they just want free bids from as many contractors as they can get to submit one? If so, why do they want you to submit one?
Yeah. And
then I have a more general question. I want to make a note to myself. Client tone. What's my sense of the person? First impression. First impressions can be wrong.
You're going to laugh, but it's interesting. But I highlighted client tone in my own notes. Isn't that funny that you focus on that?
Well, it's the last and concluding item, and it's an important one. If you want someone who, is immediately treating you as just a cheap resource that, you want to be a little careful. You might go further with them. I put together my lead evaluation on that first phone call with a client. And there's very few jobs that I wouldn't follow up an initial lead evaluation with a sales call, which is an hour, hour and a half with the client talking about their project. I just enjoy that visit. I like to see people's homes. I like to see their ideas or hear their ideas, talk to them about projects. So I'll generally follow up on a lead evaluation, even if I'm doubtful about the project, with a sales call. For one thing, I have found that fairly often I would visit people and tell them, you know, I got to caution you about taking on this project with the resources you have.
Huh.
And if you want to take it on, I'm not the right contractor for you. Be careful about trying to go with a contractor who's so cheap he'll do it for you with your budget. Or I might just leave them with some thoughts and end up realizing that they needed to get the job done soon, and I was booked for 14 months and they couldn't wait for me.
Yeah.
But those sales calls often led to references.
I was going to say that you deliver that with such confidence and such genuineness that they would almost want you and say, we'll wait 15 months for you to show up.
People would wait for us for over a year. Yeah. We would often be booked for 2 years, which has its pluses and minuses.
Yeah.
But
it doesn't give you the opportunity to get that new business.
Well, there may be something that would pop up that it kind of precluded commercial work, because commercial work can never wait a year and a half. It can wait about 10 days.
Yeah.
10 minutes.
And you're working through the night and weekends.
Yeah. We got to get that restaurant open, man.
Yeah.
We got to get our office up and running. Yeah.
One of the things, so here's one of my observations, it's one of the things I've noticed when I go to sign a lease agreement on a property, and I see and I hate leasing, by the way. I prefer to own my own property, but from time to time you lease, and I'll read the landlord's agreement, and there's weird clauses in there, like water usage. And you think that's a weird clause, the usage of water in an office.
Oh. Huh.
And I always look at that and I think to myself, I know what happened to this landlord. They got burned on water at some point. And so now they've got all these clauses about water, which don't make sense in an office rental thing. And so in your lead sheet, I see you have this simple little question that says property owned. And I wonder if you ever found yourself getting burned by going through the whole rigmarole and somebody saying, actually, I'm a tenant and I just want to get the price so that my landlord will fix it for me.
Actually, no.
Wow.
I never had, and to be honest, I never really had this line in my own lead sheet. I added it to the lead sheet as I prepared it for publication of the book. And here's why. Here's the story. Two friends of mine who are superb builders, very well-established companies, were called by a woman who wanted to do a major reconstruction of a home on a beautiful lot up in the hills here. They were called by her during a very difficult recession, and they needed work. And so when a call came in, they lunged toward the prospect being offered. And both of them, without doing their proper research according to a lead evaluation sheet like this one, proceeded to offer to bid on the job and create, without charge, an estimate for her. Now, the one guy spent 100 hours on the estimate. It was a very, very complicated project. The other guy spent 200 hours. He's kind of a slow estimator.
Okay.
I mean, but for this project, an 80 to 100 hours was a reasonable budget for estimating. After they submitted their estimates, which were very close to one another, they both nailed their numbers.
Sure.
They learned that she didn't own the property.
Oh.
She was considering buying it, but before she did, she wanted to know what her renovation costs were. And when she saw the numbers, she said, I really appreciate it, fellows, but you made me realize it wouldn't be wise of me to purchase this property. And they never asked her. She never told them.
And she just got 300 hours of free, highly skilled labor. Actually, one of the things you say in the book, let me look at my notes, is estimates are done by the most capable and highly paid people in your company.
They damn well better be. Unfortunately, they sometimes aren't, because people, it's kind of like, I just thought of this. Let me throw it out. It's kind of like waterproofing details on a job. I mean, it's not exciting work. You don't get prestige from doing great window flashing. Nobody ever sees it. You get prestige from putting in the rosewood banister.
Yeah.
But so it gets handed off to the lowest guy, the new apprentice, and then you end up with a building that leaks. It has to be torn apart, rebuilt. You end up with a lawsuit. I mean, water damage, water leaks are along with bad estimating, the primary source of lawsuits in the industry. And the reason bad estimates are a source of lawsuits is because guys woefully underestimate jobs,
And
because
then they have to make it
they
work.
don't assign the estimating to a capable guy, or they're not, more than likely, they're not capable at it themselves, because they haven't done the hard work to become good estimators. So they get into a job, they're realizing they're losing their shirt, and they start to generate change orders that are dicey, and they get in a fight with the owner, and it ends up in arbitration or a lawsuit.
Yeah.
But conscientious bidding, thorough evaluation of potential clients, and estimating are, I've come to think, really the heart of a construction business which is going to make it. I mean, obviously you have to have other capabilities, but you can be great at marketing, and you can be a great craftsman / project manager and have great people to do that work if you've grown to the size where you have crews. But it's all for naught if you cannot astutely select the projects you're going to bid and then accurately nail your numbers, estimate your costs. Because one mistake and you're done. I just heard a story about a couple that has been in business for quite a long time and violated a cardinal rule. They took on a job which was just way too much bigger than any job they'd ever done before. But when you evaluate jobs, to go back for a moment, you really need to look at project size. I think there's a good rule of thumb here. You never go after a job that's more than twice as big as one you've done before. And you never more than double your volume year to year. That's a rule of thumb from a guy named Thomas Schlafer, who's written a wonderful book called something like Running, what is it called? Escapes my memory. But it's one of the very few books about construction management that's actually worth reading. I hope mine is another, but his definitely is one. So these guys made the mistake. I mean, they took on this job, which was X number of times bigger than what they'd done before. They were a small remodeling company. The job was, I think they bid it at $950,000. Maybe their biggest job to date was a small $150,000 addition or a big kitchen remodel. And they lost $250,000 on it. Oh. And I hear this story over and over and over because and the story is generated out of the fact that people don't understand that bidding and estimating is really the hub of their company. It's the foundation of possible success, and they don't put in the work to learn how to do it.
Well, it takes a lot of time too.
Good estimators are highly skilled people. In really big construction companies actually know what they're doing, unlike, guys like at our level, if I may say so, you're sort of builder who came up out of the trades and learned to be a businessman. They'll pay for a crack estimator, they'll pay a salary of $200,000-$300,000 a year.
Because it's going to make you money. Huh? It should, mistakes made in estimating echo throughout the job. And, the observation that you just made about your friends who, fell short on that job, I feel bad for them. But I hear it from the other side. Because people talk to me and they're like, I'm going to call Dominic. I want to double my sales. So they get on the phone with me, and that's how we usually start. I want to double my sales. Yep. Well, and at some point I'll have to turn the question back on them and say, okay, you want to double sales from wherever you are today. Is your team ready to do double the output? are your credit facilities able to double the output? When you say double your sales, is it just double the material costs, or are you, especially right now with the price of a 2x4 or a sheet of tongue and groove, it's easy to double sales because things just went up 9 times. But what does that mean, and what are the real impacts on the business? Because doubling sales might not, I want to get you there, but you can't get there instantly. You have to learn to do $100 job, then a $200 job, then $1,000 job. You've got to take those steps, or like you said, you will get burned.
Dead on. I'm glad you're doing that, because I know other people who are in the business of teaching guys how to do marketing and sales who aren't paying any attention to the result. They are suggesting that revenue increase in and of itself is somehow a success. So I would add to, or extend
profit is a success
there with this question to the guy, if he was calling me, which he won't be. But if someone was to call me and say, I want you to help me double my sales, Dave, I would say, well, are you at your current level of sales accurately estimating your costs and realizing your intended markups for overhead and for profit? That's the other side of bidding. First stage of bidding is qualifying the project. Then there's that grind it out, highly skilled craft work of estimating. And then finally, you return to bidding, which is to astutely apply overhead markup. Mm-hmm. And finally, to really make a big executive decision, determine how much profit you can aim for on the job.
Yeah.
So if a guy wants to double his revenue, he needs to look carefully and see whether he's actually achieving his intended markups and revenues and a reasonable level of markup. His markups for overhead and profit. Is he achieving those at his current level of revenue? And if not, then the first step is to refine his business systems, his bidding and estimating systems and others, till he's got a company which is actually already successful at the level that it's at. And he may well decide when he gets there, this is heaven. I don't want to take on more work. Yeah. I kept my company very compact. I saw too many guys try to pump up revenue in large size and have a really unhappy experience. And I've got friends who've, we've tracked side by side now for decades.
Yeah.
We're getting to be old dogs. And the irony is these guys had companies much larger than I did. And I've got far more assets and that generate far more cash flow, that support far greater freedom.
It's about profitability.
Growth is exciting, but it's to be undertaken with caution.
Yeah.
That's the subject of my next book more than our discussion today, but I thought I'd throw it in.
Yeah. Actually, let's start winding things down and talk about your books, because I think people, I love the wisdom and the confidence and just clarity that you speak with. I found you through this book called Nail Your Numbers, but you said you've written a couple of other ones. I'm holding up the book, Nail Your Numbers.
Yeah.
The Skilled Construction Estimating and Bidding.
Yeah.
Massive feedback on Amazon, by the way. You're making a difference in the world. This is a reference tool.
I'm actually feeling that I need to write another book called Construction Bidding and Estimating Boiled Down to Basics. Because this book is a little overwhelming for, it's 400 pages. It looks like a damn chemistry textbook. I produced it on a computer, of course. That's how we write books these days. And when I got the first actual paper copy, I was horrified. It's a bit intimidating. It is true, as you say, that a guy could select from it subjects that he feels he needs some support with and move forward, I think. But I'd also like to have, for guys who are fairly new to their careers, a basic 100-page manual that teaches them how to bid and estimate, or prompts their thinking about how to bid and estimate. Because it's not really something you can teach. It's something you can stimulate thought about. People find their own way to it.
Well, and this is about, if you're an electrical contractor, if you're an HVAC contractor, if you do fences and decks, or if you do bathroom renos, the information's still in here. This isn't just about framing of new construction.
I think so.
So this is really, or maybe to throw in for you, about the business of estimating. This whole show, Profit Tool Belt, is about the business of the construction business. It's not about how to be a
Right.
contractor. It's
Right.
about the business of being a contractor.
You know what? Becoming a good builder requires a period of study twice that it takes to become a doctor.
Oh boy.
Ideally, in my opinion. I mean, you need to become a competent craftsman, whatever your trade may be. And that's a 5-year process minimally. I mean, in 5 years, if you're conscientious and you study, pay attention on the job, work hard, you can become good at the fundamentals of carpentry, electrical, or plumbing.
Right.
There may be some little nuances that you haven't quite mastered yet, but you'll be a journeyman, a good one. Then you're going to spend 4 or 5 more years learning how to run a business. That's a 10-year program.
And it's a completely different skill set, by the way, than
very different.
Being a carpenter or a mason or an electrician,
Well,
whatever it is.
Yes, in a way, and no in a way. Because here's what those two skill sets have in common. I think this thought really just popped into my head. But fundamental to succeeding with both of those skill sets is an ability to organize, sequence work, trim out wasted motion, perform efficiently. They're both very much founded in control of chronology. So there's some similarity, some fundamental similarity. I think if you're a good carpenter who can organize work well on a job site, execute sequentially, efficiently, you may have embedded already the brain capabilities that will enable successful acquisition of the business skills, of company management skills.
Yeah. Well, either way, it's a continuous study for all of us. I mean, you're still learning in business. I'm still learning in business, right? I'm still surprised every day by some of the things I learned.
I'll tell you the lesson I learned yesterday.
Sure.
Too embarrassing.
Oh, okay.
Should have learned it 40 years ago, but all right.
You know, the one I recently learned that I think is funny is I sometimes get bored when I'm reading contracts and agreements. And when I first published my book, I didn't realize I had to buy 200 copies of my own book. and so I'm like, it just, I glanced it over. I'm sure I saw it, but I didn't think about the implication of that clause. And that's what the publisher wants these days. They want you to be, the first bulk buyer.
There's a lesson beyond that I could share with you but I won't on air. It's not of interest to your listeners, but
that's okay.
I share with you personally about
publishing. David, if somebody wants to get in touch with you or find out more about you, how would we do that?
They want to learn more about me God knows why they would want to learn more about me, but they can learn about my books at my website, davidgerstel.com. They're welcome to get in touch with me. I like talking to builders. I generally don't charge for it. Somebody wants serious extended consulting. We work something out, but it's not really a business I'm in.
Right.
They can look at my books on Amazon. davidgerstel.com. Spelled David is spelled David, and the last name is spelled Gerstel. davidgerstel.com.
Excellent.
Welcome.
Well, and when your next book comes out, can you please put me on the roster? I'd like to have you back to talk about it. You're a wonderful guest.
Thank you.
You're what people want to hear. They want more of you and less me. So we'll have to have you on.
Well, yeah. You know what? We need business advisors who can think clearly. There's a few of you guys around who haven't swung a hammer, which you should be ashamed of course. But
I've swung a hammer. It's just been a long time.
You have.
It's been a long. Oh yeah.
Have you swung one of the new titanium hammers though?
No, but they look really cool.
Oh, they are the coolest thing since orbital jigsaws, I would say. But no, seriously, I've learned a great deal from people who are not craftsmen, haven't been craftsmen, who understand business issues and who feed us good thinking that we can then take from as suits ourselves.
Yeah.
There are people who are in the who kind of trying to piggyback on the construction business as consultants, who I don't appreciate. But there's some good folks too. Don't necessarily have to have swung a hammer for years and years to be able to help somebody think about business strategy.
Admittedly, I was better behind a paint roller than I was a hammer, but I've spent my time with a hammer, or and when I made mistakes, I had to use the persuader. Do you know what the persuader is?
I imagine
it's a sledgehammer. Persuader is a
Oh,
sledgehammer.
yeah. That's a big mistake.
That's a big mistake. The foreman would go over. I worked on a crew with some German guys, and they were from, I'm going to get the country wrong, in South America where there's lots of Germans. I've forgotten it now. Anyways, Dominic gets a persuader. You have to get a persuader because my wall was out or something. And I had to tap it with the sledgehammer.
That. Okay, that's fine. I was seeing you, smashing things apart.
No, just
nudging it over. Yeah. We've all had occasion to do that. Yeah.
All right, sir. Well, thank you very much for being a guest on the show. And as I say, I'd love to have you back again when the next book is ready to go.
That'd be a treat. Yeah.
All right. Have a great day.
Okay, Dom. Take care, man. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks to everybody for listening also. Appreciate that.